Hi there, it's Dr. Bernstein. Welcome to the third part of our series on Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland. And in this video, I'm going to take us a little deeper into the novel by setting it within the context of Gothic literature as well as 18th century conceptions of the sublime. So I want to start by saying a few words about the Gothic aspects of this novel, which will sort of help you put into context some of the striking details that you're encountering in the text. If you're not familiar with the Gothic conventions, then it could seem like totally original, but really Brown was working in some ways within the established conventions of the Gothic novel. So Donna Campbell, who is a professor, a literary scholar, has some basic information about the elements of a Gothic novel that I want to share with you. She notes that Gothic novels aim to create terror and open fiction to the realm of the irrational, including perverse impulses, nightmarish terrors, and obsessions. And these are the things that are sort of lurking beneath the surface of the civilized or the normal mind. It's sort of this idea that we have this dark side within us. According to her, characters in these kinds of novels may include an innocent heroine persecuted by a lustful villain. They might disappear mysteriously, be subject to seemingly supernatural occurrences, and focus on deaths and the events surrounding death. And in general, as Campbell notes, these novels have an atmosphere of gloom, terror, or mystery, and they include mysterious events that cause the protagonist to question the evidence of his or her senses and the presence of seemingly supernatural beings. And they tend to be set in a sort of isolated place or a far off time, and they're often in some sort of ruined mansion or castle. And the building may be associated with past violence and contain hidden doors, subterranean secret passages, concealed staircases, and other such features. And of course, the events in these kind of Gothic novels are often violent or macabre and can't be hidden or rationalized despite the efforts of the narrator. So if you've been reading Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland, I'm sure you've already noticed a number of these conventions of the Gothic novel. So what I want you to do now is take a little time to review what I've said about the Gothic conventions, and then I want you to go through the narrative, through Brockden Brown's narrative, and get the specific examples that illustrate the extent to which this novel fits the Gothic conventions. Because you don't want to just say the conventions, you want to connect them specifically to things in the novel. Also, I want to point out something important that Jake Fliegelman, the literary scholar who wrote the preface, the introduction to the Penguin edition of Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland, he makes a really important point that illustrates in some ways how Brown does not conform to the conventions of the traditional or the classic or stereotypical Gothic novel. And he says that for Brown, the role of the writer, and this part is actually a quote from Charles Brockden Brown. So the role of the writer, and here comes the quote, is to enchain the attention and ravish the souls of those who study and reflect. It's to enchain the attention and ravish the souls of those who study and reflect. This last phrase, Fliegelman remarks, was intended to distance him from the hack writer who provided familiar visceral pleasures to unreflective consumers of literature. So there are these, a lot of the traditional Gothic novels, they're sort of capturing people's attention, sensationalizing these details, but really It's not meant to make people more reflective. It's really sort of just like, like popular fiction now. It's not really meant to necessarily get you thinking about deep issues, but to sort of enjoy the read. And Brown was not exactly on board with that. So Brown, and this is what Fliegelman says, Brown attacked popular Gothic fiction for its commodifying of thrills, its provision of an endless and interchangeable stream of pleasant, because distant, horrors, and its repetition of a formula in order to trigger a mechanistic response in readers. So when you're reading Wieland, I want you to think about how his narrative functions to not just arouse these sensational feelings. I mean, it does do that. It does have that horror gothic feel to it. But he doesn't have these terrors and thrills just for the sake of them. But what we want to think about is, how does it enchain our attention? How does his narrative get us, just like it gets his characters, how does it get us to study and reflect so that we're reflective consumers rather than unreflective consumers? Now, in order to guide you a little bit deeper into this exploration, I want to introduce you to some of Edmund Burke's ideas about the sublime. Now, I'm sure you've heard the word sublime before. Nowadays, when we use the word sublime, it usually means like we're saying that something is really excellent. And any dictionary will tell you that sublime means elevated or exalted, especially in dignity or honor, or sort of rendered finer in terms of purity or excellence. But this type of sublime that is connected, and in my interpretation, with the Gothic and with Charles Brockden Brown's Wieland, is different, and it is related to 18th century conceptions of the sublime. And Edmund Burke, in 1757, published a treatise called A Philosophical Inquiry into the Origin of Our Ideas of the Sublime and Beautiful. So I want to sort of give you some details from his book, some excerpts that will help you have a better understanding of the sublime. So he really is focusing on the sublime in relation to aesthetics. Kant once, the philosopher Immanuel Kant, once defined the aesthetics as the science which treats or studies the conditions of sensuous perception. So it's really aesthetics, if we're thinking about it, it's not about criticism of art, it's really about our responsiveness to our senses, our responsiveness to our sensory responsiveness to works of art, how things make us feel, and what it is about those works that make us feel in certain ways. And of course, it's often used in relationship to art. So in his treatise, Burke describes how the passion caused by the great and sublime in nature, and we can substitute nature with the specific events in this story, how the passion caused by the great and sublime in nature, when those causes operate most powerfully, is astonishment. And astonishment is that state of the soul in which all its motions are suspended with some degree of horror. In this case, the mind is so entirely filled with its object. Like when we're taking in something that's sublime, it's like it crowds out everything else. It's so amazing that that's like the only thing present in our mind. So he's saying that in this case, the mind is so entirely filled with its object that it cannot entertain any other, nor by consequence reason on that object which employs it. So there's something about the sublime that really swamps all our categories of knowing. It's like we don't have a framework for understanding what it is. It exceeds our ability to think rationally about it or put it within some sort of framework. And if you're in my American Lit class and you're in a class where we've read something like Mary Rowlandson's captivity narrative, we were talking about how How do you frame this totally terrifying, in some ways, sublime experience by using narrative? And we're getting that in Charles Brockden Brown's narrative. Clara is trying to create this narrative to a framework around this sublime event. But we keep seeing how these experiences really exceed this ability to do this. So Burke explains, because he talks about the sublime and the beautiful, I just want to point out the difference. Burke explains that the sublime always dwells on great objects and terrible. The beautiful, on the other hand, focuses on small ones, pleasing things. We submit to what we admire, but we love what submits to us. So he makes a distinction between the sublime and the beautiful. One thing you might want to do when you're reading Brown's narrative is think about, what represents the sublime in this narrative and what represents the beautiful, or who represents the beautiful. Furthermore, Burke notes that to make anything very terrible or sublime, obscurity seems in general to be necessary. When we know the full extent of any danger, when we can accustom our eyes to it, a great deal of the apprehension vanishes. So this is so important when you're looking and when you're dealing with something that's sublime. It's like you can't see all the edges of it. You can't take in the whole thing at once because there are elements that are obscured. And this is part of what makes it sublime and terrifying, is that you can't put it into a neat little framework. So I want you to think about this when you're reading the novel, obviously. And Burke says that with the sublime, the mind is hurried outside of itself by a crowd of great and confused images, which affect because they are crowded. For separate them and you lose much of the greatness, and join them and you infallibly lose the clearness. One more point that I want to call your attention to is that according to Burke, it is our ignorance of things that causes all our admiration and chiefly excites our passions. Knowledge and acquaintance make the most striking causes affect but little. So there is something about the sublime or these great experiences or things that we can't really put into a box and know all about that really activate our minds and affect us the most. So when you're reading, what I want you to do is think about what makes some of the specific events in Wieland sublime, in Burke's sense of the sublime. Identify what these sublime events are. To what extent do you think the events in this narrative or the characters in this narrative live up to Burke's definition of what constitutes the sublime? And, one thing you've probably noticed about the sublime is the effect it has on the soul and the mind. So I want you to be looking at how these sublime effects influence Clara's mind. Look at the descriptions, really, of her mind. There are lots of descriptions of how her mind is trying to process this information. And I also want you to think about this in relationship to your own processing of the information in Wieland. So that's it for now. Take care. Bye.